Hello and welcome to Monday Morning Detective, the podcast. This is episode 31 and I am your host, Gino Scala. Today we're going to go over the probable cause affidavit that was completed and sworn to by Corporal Brett Payne of Moscow PD. It was well written and really explained a lot of things that we didn't know. And it seems like they were on this suspect, Brian Koberger, from Pennsylvania. It seems like they were on him quite early in the investigation. And we now know why. We now know that the Elantra was not a red herring and that much of the investigation surrounded that vehicle. We know that cell phone data and valuable video data plays a huge part. And we also know that they did obtain DNA and got the results quite quickly. And we'll cover all that right away. So, today the probable cause affidavit was released. Now, this is something that you present at a preliminary hearing when the police department or the law enforcement agency has to present probable cause as to why they've arrested a particular suspect and why this particular suspect should remain in jail, in custody. So it was about 15, 20 pages, a little bit longer than most, but there was, obviously it's a quadruple homicide and they had to make sure all their T's were crossed and all their I's were dotted. So I want to touch on some of the highlights, and I'm going based on memory, which is not very good. So first thing we learned is that the Hyundai Elantra was spotted months in advance to driving around that Kings Road residence. And I believe it was months, could be more of a matter of weeks, but I would say it was easily a month. So something occurred that got this suspect interested in the people at that residence. We don't know what that is. But the video shows the vehicle in the area multiple times at various hours of the day and night. During this period of time, they also correlated his cell phone pinging off the tower there. So you put the cell phone in his hand, the cell phone is in his car, and it's pinging off the cell tower that the Kings Road apartment uses. That's pretty good. They also have video of him returning to WSU on all these trips. So they were very thorough in getting video. Much of it was probably city, but also private businesses and residences to substantiate his comings and goings. Second, police officer at WSU, campus police, located his vehicle after the incident, parked at school with a Pennsylvania license plate. And he made note of it. At this point, that person wasn't a suspect. The police were simply looking for a white Elantra. Days later, a second campus police officer saw the vehicle, which now had Washington plates. So it can easily be assumed that he either re-registered the car in that short period of time or was already registered and just switched out his old plates with his current plates, switched out the current plates with his old plates in order to commit the crime, and then switched them back the next day. That's probably what happened. Just in case someone, a civilian, were to see the license plate, they wouldn't know what state it was from. They probably wouldn't recognize it, and would probably have difficulty in reading it. But, that's one reason why people switch plates. Now, on the day of the event, they have his cell phone leaving his residence in Washington, driving the 10 miles, and as he got closer to the Idaho campus, the cell phone is turned off. It either goes into airplane mode or it's turned off completely. There's no pinging at the residence. And so that shows that, it's certainly premeditated and that he's attempting to prevent being identified. Now, at the residence, this is really where it gets interesting, but in a very, very sad way. We have the knife sheath was located at the scene, and DNA was obtained from that sheath, but it did not match anybody at that point. One of the roommates, Dylan and DM, tells police that she heard the dog barking and she got up. I guess she peeked out her door, probably, for a variety of reasons, but normally because they're, in pajamas or in very light clothing and don't want to be seen, or they're just nosy. But she peeks out and hears a female, unidentified, at least in the affidavit, it's listed as one of the victims, saying to someone that someone is here. And then a few minutes later, they hear a male voice saying, "Don't worry, I will help you." Now, we don't, the male voice is believed to be the suspect. We don't know who the female's voice is, but I'm sure they have an idea of what was said and what was meant by it. Turns out that Zaina was on the floor of her bedroom, and Chapin was still in the bed, both deceased. And both girls, Maddie and Kaylee, were found in their beds as well. The suspect then walked down the hallway as the roommate, DM, was looking out her door, went right past her without seeing her, which indicates to me that the door was cracked open just slightly. And this suspect, she described as 6 feet or taller, 185 pounds, slim, And Brian Kohlberger is 6 feet tall, 185 pounds. He was dressed all in black, wearing a black mask. We don't know what kind of a mask. We don't know if it's a balaclava or a COVID type mask or just a ski mask. We don't know. But she did not see his face. But she saw him. Now, the footprint in blood outside of DM's room had a footprint mark, and it's the same mark of a Vans sneaker, which is the sneaker that the suspect wears on a daily basis. I do not know if that sneaker is part of the evidence. He may have gotten rid of it. I don't know. But it's shocking to hear how close this other potential victim was to being killed, slaughtered, which goes to show, I think it leads us to believe that they did not leave their residence, their bedrooms, for a very, very long time. We know that the call came at noon, which is 8 hours after the incident. It seems to me she was terrified and stayed in her room during that period of time until perhaps she was she heard the other surviving roommate, and then together they discovered the scene. We don't know. This is all speculation. It's also very likely that DM is the one that passed out when the report came of an unconscious person. This poor girl is traumatized for the rest of her life, having seen what she saw, having heard what she heard, and having experienced this, and how close she was. Now the DNA, once they followed or trailed the suspect, traced him back to his residence in Pennsylvania, they took the family garbage and tested DNA. And the DNA from their trash matches the father of the DNA on the sheath. They know through genealogical DNA testing that whoever's DNA was in the family trash, presumably a cup, is linked to as being the father, having contributed DNA to the suspect. And that suspect's DNA was on the sheath. So they have a father-son connection. And my understanding is he only has one son. So it's very interesting what kind of Now this DNA match the odds were astronomical as it being anybody else. As I said from the beginning, genealogically, the only way they could have gotten something back so quickly if it was a direct match to a parent or a sibling, and we didn't have to go into the cousins and the fourth cousins and such. Then you're talking about a long period of time of investigating. But in this case, it was a direct match, and they got it quite early, quite quickly. And it's a solid case. It is absolutely a solid case. They have cell phone data of him leaving, and he took a very long route to go back to WSU. They have all the cell tower pings going back. He did not take a direct route. He took a direct route from WSU, but not back home. So this is going to be very, very difficult for the defense. My guess is that he's going to be offered life for life terms instead of the death penalty, giving up all his rights to appeals and paroles, obviously, and potentially allowed to spend his life in prison in or near Pennsylvania for his family's sake. That's very, that's the maximum he would be able to deal with. They don't have to deal anything. This case is pretty good, but you don't want the families to have to go through this. Now, in exchange for that kind of a plea deal, he not only has to plead guilty, obviously, but he's going to sit down and tell step by step what took place and why. And he will be someone that they study for many years, like they did with Ted Bundy. And I don't think I've forgotten anything as far as this affidavit. I can tell you that it's very well done, very easy to follow, and it seems like I hate to say a slam dunk, but OJ looked like a slam dunk too, but the DNA was different back then. It was brand new and people didn't understand it. So at least that's what they tell us. And that'll do it for this episode 31 of the Monday Morning Detective. And we'll look forward to talking with you next time. Have a great day.